Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. As you know, this is a webinar where we're going to talk about Lyme disease. I think I got my microphone problem fixed from last week, so I hope you all can hear me. If I will check my screen here earlier in the webinar to make sure that happens. I apologize about last week. I didn't realize that my microphone had malfunctioned, and I actually talked to myself and with you listening, but you all couldn't hear me for an hour. so that wasn't too good. So I apologize for that. And it seems to be my time of technical failures. I understand now, it's got an email from somebody saying they didn't receive the sign up email notification that I send out. And it looks like MailChimp, who I use as my server, said it delivered all of the emails yesterday, but it looks like it did not. So we may have a small turnout tonight. I just resent that email out with an invite, so we may get some people that join us late because they just don't realize what's going on. But right now we have a small crowd, and so that'll give us, for those of you that are here already, probably will be able to get through your questions tonight, all right? So for those of you that are new, welcome. I'm glad to see some new names on my board. I'm also glad to see a number of people have returned again too. And I think that means you probably still keep getting some value. I'm just checking to make sure that no one's complaining they can't hear me tonight. It looks like it's a go here. Anyhow, the way these webinars work is there's two ways you can participate. Number one, you can see and hear the questions. You'll see them if you're in the live version because I post them on the screen. But you can see and hear the questions and see what my responses are. And often there's some good information you're going to get that way that may help you with issues you're having in your own treatment and care. The other thing you can do is be bold and write a question. And the way you do that is on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a chat box at the bottom. And using that chat box, you can, yeah, it looks like things are working here. Using that chat box, you can write questions to me, and I will wind up going through as many of those as I can, and I will respond, and you'll actually see those on your screen. Now, the reason I read those questions out loud is that in the recorded version, even though in the live version you can see the messages on your screen, in the recorded version you can't. So I need to read them so that people that are listening to the recording can actually know what we're talking about, okay? So this is one of two more webinars I'm having in July, so tonight and the next Wednesday. If for some reason you do not get that notification email, you can actually go to treatlyme.net, my Lyme information site, Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD, go to the webinars page and click on the sign up button there. Okay, so even if you don't get an email from me, you can sign up without that email too. Okay, all right. One other thing about your questions, as you're writing them, I ask that you do not hit the enter key until your whole question is complete. Keep in mind that each time you click that enter key, it sends a separate question my direction. Okay, all right. And so one last thing, it is hotter than I'll get out here in Austin, Texas right now, so I've broken out the Hawaiian shirt. So that way I can stay a little bit cooler here, so that's why you're seeing me with all this color on tonight. Yeah, so anyhow, let's go and get started here. All right, hello, Tyler. Let's see. I apologize for repeating the same question from last week, but I unfortunately didn't get to hear the answer. Evidently, there was some problem with the audio. And an article from your website titled "A Review of Lyme Infection Test Pass or Fail," you mentioned that a T white blood cell reaction test can result in a false positive due to other causes of inflammation. What sources of inflammation specifically could cause a false positive for this type of test? Autoimmune diseases, mold, viral infections. So everyone, a T cell reaction test is one way that you can look to see if your immune system is reacting against Lyme or the tick-borne infections. And another name for a T cell reaction test is something called an Elispot. Okay, so Armin Labs does Elispot test, and then here in the States, Infectolab does Elispot testing too. So the way that an Elispot test works is we basically take proteins from from germs, and we put them into a test tube full of T white blood cells that we get from your blood. And then we measure if those T white blood cells make certain cytokines, inflammatory cytokines that they would make if they have reacted, they've tried to attack one of those infections sometimes in the past. The trouble is some of these antigens that are being used may sometimes be similar to antigens of other infections like viral infections or bacterial infections, causing the white blood cell to react and still make cytokines, but not because that white blood cell had seen a Lyme infection or a Bartonella infection before, but had seen a germ that looked similar, and therefore you get a false positive reaction. So that's what I meant by that. I actually recently cleaned that up based upon your comment last week, and now it says caused that I pulled the word inflammation out and said other causes of infection leading to inflammation, I believe. For those of you that are interested, I actually did a video article that I posted last week, about a week ago, explaining why I think that the ELISPOT test is not the best way to see if you have infection for various reasons, including that the way that Armin Labs and the way that Infectolab does it here in the States, they're not testing you for enough strains. I think a better way of testing for these infections is to do a method that IGenex is offering called an Immunoblot. And what they're doing in Immunoblot is they're looking to see if your immune system has made antibodies that attach to various proteins found on the covering of the germs. And what makes their test better is that it looks on the Lyme side if you have antibodies against 8 strains of Lyme germs. Armin Elispot only looks to see if you have a reaction against 3 strains, and Infectolab only looks to see if you have a reaction against 1 strain with their Elispot test. On the Bartonella side, the Immunoblot through IGenex can look to see if you have had a reaction against the whole family of Bartonella, which includes 15 different strains that can infect people. Armin and Infectolab only look to see if your T cells react against 1 strain, which is called Bartonella henselae. And then for Babesia, IGenex looks to see if you react against the whole family of Babesia, meaning it can pick up multiple strains. We think maybe 15 to 20 strains. And Armin and Infectolab are restricted to only testing against 1 strain with their TCL reactive test. So I prefer the Immunoblot these days, okay? If you happen to miss that article, I'll show you it here in just a second. So anyhow, Tyler, I hope that answers your question. And let me do a quick screen share here to show you that new article that I published last week. All right, so take a look. If you ever want to know what is the latest thing that I published, take a look and click on this latest tab right over here. And the article I published is this one called Best Choice, and I call it the best lab and test for Borrelia, Bartonella, and Babesia. I review the ins and outs of ELISPOT testing and the Immunoblot and explain why I think the Immunoblot is a better way to go, all right? And again, that's the IGenex Immunoblot. All right. Let's see here. Thanks for that question, Tyler. All right, let me do one more quick check to make sure that no one's complaining that they can't hear me tonight. It looks like it's working tonight. Good. All right. So next question is from Andrea. Hello, Andrea. Let's see. What do you think of the live blood analysis? Can it detect and diagnose Lyme and co-infections? Had one done a few weeks ago, and you could see tiny parasites in and out of the blood cells. So the problem is I don't think that live blood analysis is reliable or accurate. The problem is many germs look the same. And so even on a live blood analysis, if you happen to see a spirochete, for instance, the Lyme spirochete, the corkscrew looking thing, that doesn't prove it is Lyme. It just means they're seeing a spirochete. There are other types of germs that look like spirochetes. There are many germs that look the same. And so I don't consider it a precise way of being able to tell if you have infections or not. All right. Thanks for that question. Oh, the other thing Andrea would let you know is we have all kinds of germs living in us. And just like we have germs that live in our skin and they don't cause us trouble, we have a number of germs that live inside of us. So just seeing germs doesn't mean it's an infection that is causing disease. These could be just microbes that cohabitate with us as well too, okay? Hello, Brandy. Let's see, did you post last week's webinar to YouTube? I was not able to find it. So the answer to that is no, because my microphone malfunctioned last week. I talked for an hour, but I wasn't able to capture any of it. So anyhow, let's see. I was not able to find it. Let's see, what's your take on gallium nitrate, Desbio, and Lyme Stop? They seem to be commonly in popular use on the forums these days. All right. So gallium nitrate, I know that I'm starting to see people raising that as something. And to be honest with you, I'm just not familiar enough with it. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. I know that one of my colleagues on the iLabs message board for physicians wondered what this was too. And I know that it is popular in the Lyme support consumer groups, I would say, or there's starting to be conversations around them, but I don't know anything about it, to be honest with you. I have to look into it. In terms of Desbio, Desbio offers a number of what I would call homeopathic agents for a Lyme. I think on the whole, homeopathy of any kind is better at supporting a person, but not necessarily the thing that's going to get you well and make you feel well. I will admit that some people that use Desbio feel better, but there is something called a placebo effect. And if we look at data on prescription drugs, where they do what are called double-blind randomized control studies. And what that means is they do research to see if the drug they give has benefit. And they also do, at the same time, they do research to see if they gave somebody a sugar pill, would they get the same benefit, okay? And during the experiment, the people that get the real pill and those that get the sugar pill don't know what they're getting. Also, the researchers collecting information during the project don't know who got what initially either. Then when the whole study is completed, the data has been evaluated, then they unblind it so people know who got what, okay? And if we look at any drug, there is a 30 to 35% chance that somebody will feel better if they take a sugar pill and don't take the real agent during these studies, okay? So yeah, I bet some people taking Desbio feel better. That doesn't necessarily mean it gives you long-term improvements or makes real shifts in the majority of people. And that has been my experience. In terms of Lyme Stop, I believe now has 2 locations. They originally were in Idaho, and I think they're, I forget where else they are now, but Lyme Stop is a clinic that uses both energetics, magnets, and herbal and viral antimicrobials to help people living with Lyme. I'm not so sure that the magnet therapy is what's giving people benefit, because at the same time, my understanding is Lyme Stop also gives herbal antibiotic regimens as well too. And I do see that some people get benefit. I still think on the whole, people are not getting lasting benefits that help them as much as working with a Lyme literate medical doctor that has the ability to work with both prescriptions and herbal antibiotics and put together treatments similar to what I do, for instance. Okay? All right. There you go. All right. Thanks for that question, Brandy, and thanks for coming back to ask it again. Hello, Doug. Hold on here just a minute. When I got to write down the words gallium nitrate so that I take a look and see what the fuss is about here. So, you know, in the world of Lyme disease, and I've been through this enough to know there are the new treatments that people all flock to. And after we try them for a while, we realize most of them don't work. And I think gallium nitrate probably is going to fall into that category. this year. But anyhow, I'm just giving you that we have to be careful at all these new treatments that everyone flocks to, because in the test of time, they often don't work, okay? So anyhow, but I will take a look and see it, give you an opinion on it. All right. Okay, so hi Doug, let's see. Hi Dr. Ross. I'm going to start Lyme and Bartonella treatment tomorrow. I've been treating mold for 3.5 months. I have debilitating symptoms. My doctor, who is well known, LMD, will start me off on RX antibiotics. My doctor does not believe in persisters. While I don't believe I have yeast symptoms, my doctor offers the option to use oregano oil to make sure yeast stays under control. 1, is oregano oil effective to keep yeast at bay? 2, would oregano oil be effective for persisters? And then there's a continued part. Let's see. Continuation. Can you comment on the following as to their effectiveness in keeping cytokines and inflammation under control and their ability to act as antioxidants? Curcumin, phytostan, Boswellia serrata, black seed oil, quercetin, resveratrol black tea extract. 4, I can't take glutathione for reasons that would too long to explain. What would be the next best thing to repair inside the cells? 5, do you recommend any Hopper's DNRS in the Gupta program, early in treatment or later? Thank you. That's a number of questions there, Doug. Let me try to work through these in order. I'll be glad to answer those for you, though. All right. So number 1, in terms of oregano oil, so there are a number of agents that you can use to treat persisters. There are prescriptions. Let me step back for a minute. So everyone, we now know that both Lyme and Bartonella, based on research that's come out over the last 5 years, that both of those germs exist in a growing state, and they also exist in a hibernate or a persister state. We think that one of the reasons people may have a hard time recovering from Lyme and Bartonella in those groups that have a hard time recovering is that may be due to these persisters. That's one of the ideas, okay? Now, persisters as hibernators are not growing, and therefore they may not respond to the usual antibiotics and agents we use to kill. And so for that reason, there's been quite a bit of research going on in the last 5 years trying to figure out, what do we kill these things with, okay? And so in terms of prescriptions, agents that can treat persisters, one would be Adapsone, which is a prescription antibiotic that Dr. Horowitz has done some research with. And that would do both Bartonella and Lyme persisters. There's also the prescription disulfiram, which is a drug we have repurposed from treating alcoholism, and it appears to have a good effect on treating Lyme persisters, but does nothing against Bartonella persisters. The drawback to it is it's really difficult to take, and we're seeing a small percentage of people that get permanent neuropathy after they use it. And so many of us are shying away from it. And in addition, regarding the disulfiram for Lyme, maybe 30% of people get into remission, 50% have to stop taking it because they can't tolerate the side effects, okay? Of those people that do get in remission, I have seen some long-standing remission from being on it, but because of its side effect potential, especially that neuropathy, I tend to shy away from using it these days, okay? All right. Then if we look at, there's one other prescription medicine that you can use, but it has to be compounded. It's a drug called methylene blue that we have repurposed from treating a problem that some people have with their hemoglobin, where their hemoglobin cannot release oxygen when they get under stress. We call that methemoglobinemia, and methylene blue given in an IV form can bump the oxygen off of the hemoglobin and making it so people get oxygen again, okay? Hemoglobin is the protein that carries oxygen in your red blood cells. All right, so those are your prescription options, okay? All right, then herbally, there's a number of herbs that we can use. Oregano is one oil that will take care of persisters. There's also a combination of oil that would be cinnamon, clove, and oregano. All of those have show benefit in the lab at treating persisters. Cryptolepis, which is an herb we traditionally have used to treat babesia, based on Hopkins research now shows we know that it can treat Lyme and Bartonella growing and persister forms. And then Japanese knotweed is another herb that we traditionally have used to treat Lyme, but we now know it can treat growing and persister Lyme, and it can treat growing and persister Bartonella. Okay, so I prefer these days to work with the liposomal cinnamon clove oregano because I find it to be well absorbed. It's a product made by doctor-inspired formulations. They also have an oregano product that during periods when the cinnamon clove oregano hasn't been available, I've used the oregano product. And prior to them introducing the cinnamon clove oregano product, I only used their oregano product. And I found it to be fairly good, fairly strong at dealing with persisters. So I think it's a reasonable choice to treat persisters if you're looking for an option to do that, okay? The other benefit is that oregano as a volatile oil can be something that can knock down yeast in your intestines. Now, in terms of being a strong yeast killer, I wouldn't call it the strongest. There are stronger herbal ways to do that. One of those would be to use a combination. There's a product, for instance, called Phytostan. It's Phytostan, and that's by a company called Integrative Therapeutics, that is. And their product has in it powder coke, caprylic acid, rosemary oil, thyme oil, and there's some endoleucinic acid in it, for instance. That's a couple pills 2 times a day. I would find that to be a better agent than probably just using oregano alone. And actually, you can mix them together. You can do the Phytostan as you're also taking oregano, for instance, too. Okay? All right. All right. Number 2, let's see. I think we just talked about that. Okay, I did your number 1 and your number 2. Okay, number 3. Okay, you wanted me to talk about, all right, so in terms of anti-inflammatory antioxidants, my preference, usually my preference on anything is to not use combination products, but to use individual herbs. And the reason I prefer to do that is you have a better chance of knowing what's working and if there is a reaction, what you're reacting to. So in a combination product, for instance, Research Nutritionals has a product called Cytoquel that has in it some curcumin, I believe quercetin. It's got black tea extract, and I think they've got some resveratrol in it too. It's a combination product that some people get good benefit on, but the trouble is if there's a reaction, you don't know what you reacted to, okay? My preference, therefore, is to use curcumin phytosome. It's very good as an antioxidant and as an agent that can get inside of white blood cells and limit their ability to make those inflammatory cytokines that give you most of your Lyme symptoms, okay? I also like using quercetin as an option instead of that. And the advantage of quercetin is it also can help stabilize your histamine producing cells in the body. So if you happen to have something called mast cell activation syndrome, where you're having a lot of allergic reactions and release of histamines as part of your Lyme, triggered by Lyme, it can help with that too. And then I will use Cytoquel that has a number of these other agents in it, but usually I use it as a later resort, okay? So the curcumin phytosome dosing would be 500 milligrams 3 times a day. The quercetin dosing is 250 milligrams, 2 pills 3 times a day. And a Cytoquel I would do is 1 pill 3 times a day. And that Cytoquel is Cytoquel, okay? Number 4, I can't take glutathione. All right, so glutathione is a very powerful antioxidant made in every one of our cells, and its job is to repair oxidation damage to the inside of our cells. And if you happen to be under stress, if your cells are having to fix a lot of damage, sometimes they can exhaust their glutathione gas tank, basically. Glutathione also is used within the liver to help with the liver detox functions as well, too. So if you cannot take glutathione, other things you can do would be to raise glutathione naturally, all right? And that is to give more of the building blocks that help your body make glutathione. One of those is N-acetylcysteine, also known as NAC, 500 milligrams 2 times a day, often can do a good job at helping to raise glutathione. Another one would be to take alpha lipoic acid, also known as ALA, and I would dose that at 200 milligrams 3 times a day or 350 milligrams twice a day. Okay. All right. And you can do the NAC plus the alpha lipoic acid as an alternative too. All right. All right. Finally, you raised questions about the anti-hopper DNRS and the Gupta program. All right. So for some people with chronic Lyme that have undergone treatment for a while, and by that I mean a year, maybe 2 years, and they're not fully recovering, one of the reasons that this can happen is due to a process where a part of their brain called the limbic system starts perpetuating and holding a neurologic reaction, triggering the illness symptoms, basically, okay? So the limbic system is a part of your brain that is responsible for your flight or fight response. It is what guides us to try to reproduce. It leads us to feed ourselves so that we don't starve. So it takes care of many basic functions in our body. And as a result of having chronic illness, sometimes it gets turned to an on position where people are very reactive to everything in fear of the illness, which then triggers a lot of the symptoms ongoing of the illness, okay? So the anti-hopper program, dynamic neural retraining system, DNRS, and the Gupta program are 2 ways that you can work to reprogram that part of your brain so you're just not being as reactive. And I tend not to have people do it early in the treatment because there's so many other things you're doing, okay? I tend to reserve it more for situations where a person may not be having adequate recovery, maybe a year or 2 years into the treatment, okay? Now the differences between Gupta and anti-hopper is a more aggressive program. It's kind of like the boot camp of a limbic system retraining. Gupta, although they both have some Buddhist principles in, Gupta is much more Buddhist and calm in its approach, all right? So anyhow, you could take a look at both of those. I'm going to show everyone a number of articles or some more information here, Doug. Thank you for that question. So take a look. Go back to my information site. So in my book called Hacking Lyme Disease, an Action Guide to Wellness, which is back there. Actually, I have them displayed now. And you can find on my store, or you can get it here on the books tab at Treat Lyme. Anyhow, within there, I have a section that says things you might want to look at before you get treated so that you have an idea of what you're getting into. And one of those is an article about why treatment may fail. And that is also here. This article called Why Chronic Lyme Treatment Fails, a Review of Strategies. I have it as a chapter in my book as well too, okay? And in here, I walk through a number of reasons why treatment may not work and things that people can do. And one of those is right here called the limbic system brain holding of the illness. And here is the Gupta program. I link to his website at anti-hopper, and I link to her website as well too, okay? All right. Then in terms of supplements that you can use to lower inflammation and those cytokines that we were just talking about, take a look at my store and look under this supplements tab, and then look over here under the Herxheimer die-off reaction and cytokines. And these are the various agents. Here's Research Nutritional's curcumin. This is Thorne's quercetin. This is the curcumin phytosome by Thorne that we were talking about. Here is the Cytoquel product. And then being on glutathione also can help lower those as well too. All right, so those are all here. If you're looking for what these products look like and which ones I recommend, you can take a look here. As usual, anyone can buy from my store. The advantages to buying from me is I offer free shipping for any products over $50 or any total bill over $50. In addition, I don't charge you any taxes. I cover those with the various states and local governments that require that they be charged. I don't charge them, but I do pay for those taxes on your behalf, okay? All right, let's go back here. All right, Doug, thank you for your multiple questions there. I think you asked these last week, and again, because of my failed microphone, you didn't get to hear the response. Hello, Jimmy. Let's see. What infection creates significant inflammation and tenderness at the back of the skull, causing me to become a mouth breather in a very short amount of time when I never was before? So the infection that seems to give a lot of pain on the back of the skull and down here in the neck, a lot of creaking and popping of the neck at times too. We usually associate that with Lyme infection, more so than we do with the other infections. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Jimmy. Hello, Mosby. Let's see, do you have any natural suggestions for parasite and viral treatment? They seem to go completely unattended by most Lyme literate doctors and just want to focus on bacteria and yeast. I'm of the opinion that viruses definitely play a part. Having had mono as a kid, I can tell when my parts per million is way higher than it should be based on symptoms. Antibody tests are useless, and guarding findings from long-term COVID has shared nothing after 2.5 years of study. Thank you. All right, so when somebody has chronic Lyme disease, it can be a soup of infections, okay? So what I have found in my practice is that even is when somebody has testing showing that they have elevated antibodies, meaning that sometime in their life they have had an active virus infection. It does not, having elevated antibodies after your initial infection with Epstein-Barr and human herpes virus type 6 and cytomegalovirus does not prove the germs are still very active in you or not. These are, the problem with viruses is that even healthy people, a lot of healthy people live with chronic virus infections. We cohabitate with them, and our immune systems keep them under control. If you happen to measure antibody levels or antibody titers and they're elevated, that does not prove you have an elevated viral germ load, okay? And at this point, we don't really have a good way of measuring viral loads. The only virus we have a good way of measuring viral load, actually, there's probably two, would be HIV. We can measure viral loads of HIV when people live with HIV and AIDS, and we can measure viral loads for, I believe, hepatitis C. We have the ability to do that too. But the common chronic virus infections that live in even healthy people, we do not have a way of measuring whether they're active or not, and an antibody reaction doesn't tell you that. It may, having elevated antibodies just mean your immune system is doing a darn good job keeping them under control, okay? All right. Regarding parasites, I am of the opinion they're not an issue. And where I do think they're an issue is that some people can have intestinal infections with parasites, but the idea that we are inhabited with parasites and that is leading to chronic problems, I don't think has any support in the scientific literature on that one at all, nor have I found any benefit in going after them, okay? So, but even if they're there, what my approach is when you have people have chronic Lyme, as a result of having chronic Lyme, even and if they happen to have parasites in them or they have viruses in them, one thing that can happen when you get Lyme, Bartonella, and Babesia is as the immune system is focusing on those germs, it may stop having as good of ability to keep these chronic infections under control, and then they can become part of the problem. So I do believe that in people, it is possible the viruses can become part of the problem. My approach always has been to get the bacteria of Lyme, Bartonella, and the parasite Babesia under control. Deal with those big three. And if we're about 1 year to 2 years into treatment and people still are not doing well, I will look to see if they have elevated antibodies against viruses, indicating that the viruses may be in them. Again, it doesn't prove they're active. And at that time, I may do a 6-month trial of antiviral herbs to try to see, does treating viruses give any benefit at helping them to feel better, okay? In my own approach, I've never gone after parasites except for intestinal parasites, all right? All right, so let me show you a couple articles here. All right, so in terms of my opinion on viruses, take a look at this article called When and How to Treat Chronic Viruses in Lyme, a brief guide, okay? And I walk you through an approach if you decide to treat, what you can use. But generally, I haven't found much benefit in even treating viruses, even with elevated antibody profiles. Although again, when somebody's not recovering, I think that heightens the possibility that their viruses may be active, okay? And in here, I even talked to you about how to go ahead and treat them too, okay? All right. Let's see, I think I have one on parasites too. Again, here's my article on parasites. And again, I don't believe in this idea of treating parasites that are systemic. I tend to focus more on the intestinal and one systemic parasite, which is Babesia, okay? Take a look at this article for my opinion there too, okay? All right. So most of you, on the viruses, I just want to say, I'm giving you my opinion, but I'm also sharing with you my clinical experience. And that is, when I've gone after viruses in the past, I just don't find good benefit at doing it. Even when people have elevated antibodies, I just don't find good benefit doing it. All right. Thanks for the question. Hello, Stephen. Let's see. Do any of these infections cause a parasitic anemia or low blood volume? I feel so weak and heavy. So there's a number of ways you can get anemia in treating these disorders. So first of all, some of the medications that we use, the prescription medications that we use, can suppress the bone marrow. So for instance, one of the drugs that has a common problem of doing that is dapsone. Dr. Horowitz's dapsone is notorious at doing that. But some of the other ones can do so as well. So many of us will periodically check your blood counts when you're under treatment to make sure that isn't happening. Bactrim sometimes can do it. Doxycycline can sometimes do it. And so you just need to adjust based on your medications, based on whether you're getting some of that bone marrow suppression or not. The other way that you can get anemia as part of this illness is the Babesia sometimes can cause rupture of your red blood cells. And so you can develop an anemia because of that, okay? But people would be able to see that. Feeling heavy does not mean you have anemia, it just means you feel heavy. The only way to know if you have anemia is to get a blood draw, look at what your blood counts tell you. Do you have low blood volume or not, okay? All right, thanks for the question. Hello, Frank. Thank you, Dr. Ross, for helping us Lyme sufferers. Let's see. My question is, can undiagnosed Lyme cause anasarca? Wow, I haven't heard that term in a while. Bear with me a minute. I just need to make sure I'm remembering this one correctly. Oh, okay, yeah. I was remembering that one correctly. It's a term many of us, what we tend to use more these days is edema or hold. So what anasarca is, everyone, is, where are we here. I got to get back to where I can see you guys again here. Oh, there we are. I can see. I can see me again, at least. Anyhow, anasarca means holding a lot of fluid in the tissues of the body. Okay. Another way we could say it, we call that medically, is edema, where we hold fluid. You know, I haven't seen Lyme leading to holding a fluid in the body as part of as part of the illness. I have seen the tetracyclines, especially, can lead to a lot of fluid retention in the tissues. So sometimes, if we do start seeing that, I usually I'll look at the drugs that I have a person on and see if we're getting that as a side effect. Okay. But in terms of undiagnosed Lyme leading to anasarca, not usually. Okay. Or I haven't seen it. I'll put it that way. All right. Thanks for that question, Frank. Let's see. Hello, Frank again. Hi, Dr. Ross. I had a second question. Let's see. IGenex has come out with a new product for testing Lyme, because it's called the Immunoblot. Should I try it? So I think I addressed that one earlier, Frank. I think it is the best way, that method of the Immunoblot. I think for various reasons. I explained it earlier in the article I showed you earlier tonight. I would say that the IGenex Immunoblot methodology is the best way to detect if you have, from a testing standpoint, to detect if you have Lyme, Bartonella, or Babesia. Okay. All right. Thanks for your question. If you missed that part of the webinar, it was in the earlier part of the webinar, so pay attention to it tomorrow when I put the recording out. Okay. All right. Hello, Mindy. I wanted to know what the top 3 IVs are you recommend for Lyme and mold, and in what order and combination. Is it okay to do the Buhner protocol along with itraconazole? Is it okay to take 2 to 3 chlorella daily, or are you concerned there could be metal redistribution? What do you think of zeolite for metals and mycotoxins? If I have an elevated real-time urine but no current mold exposure, is that mold colonized in the body? And what is the best thing to do to get rid of that? Okay, I'll try to work through these one at a time. So in terms of IVs that I have used with good success in treating Lyme, probably, and this is just for the Lyme infection, not for Bartonella, not Babesia, this is for Lyme infection, okay? My favorite would be to use ceftriaxone, Rocephin, which is also known as Rocephin, followed by IV doxycycline, followed by IV azithromycin or IV Zithromax. Zithromax, azithromycin are the same, okay? And you could do a combination of the ceftriaxone with doxycycline or the ceftriaxone with azithromycin. The reason you might do that is they have slightly different mechanisms of action. So the ceftriaxone works on the cell wall, the outside of the spirochete, to make it so it can't repair itself and it basically develops holes, okay? All right. And then the way that the azithromycin and the doxycycline work is pretty similar, in that they both block protein production of the germ. And so they limit its ability to grow. They also are good at getting inside of cells to treat intracellular Lyme, and they're effective at stopping the growth of spirochete Lyme as well too. All right. All right. So then, in terms of the Buhner protocol, so Buhner has an herbal protocol, which is oriented at using various herbs to kill germs as well as support the immune system. And his protocol can be quite extensive if you follow all steps of it. The one thing that Buhner has not really addressed heavily, although parts of his protocol would deal with it, is what to do for persisters. Okay, I just want you to know that. And his books were written before we knew there were these things called persisters. Some of his herbs, though, if you're using a Japanese knotweed, for instance, or you're using a cryptolepis, they would treat persisters. Itraconazole is a prescription antibiotic or antifungal and antibiotic that I use to treat both intestinal yeast. I also use it to treat the cyst form of the Lyme germ as an azole. It can treat the cyst form of the Lyme germ. And we now know from research that the azoles, and that is fluconazole, itraconazole, metronidazole, tinidazole, the azoles, that family can be effective at treating growing and persister Bartonella. And in that family, I have used fluconazole and itraconazole successfully. So can you take the itraconazole alongside of a Buhner herbal protocol? The answer is yes. I see no reason that a person can't do that, okay? All right. Let's see. Is it okay to take 2 or 3 chlorella daily? Are you concerned there could be metal redistribution? I don't buy the metal redistribution argument. The idea is that when you take a binder that moves heavy metals, that it somehow will take those heavy metals in one part of the body, will bind to the chlorella, which circulates in your blood, and then somehow releases those heavy metals into your brain, causing problems. The issue probably is better to think that once they're bound to the chlorella, they're going to stay bound to the chlorella. And the chlorella also is going to be binding those heavy metals in the brain and pulling them out as well too. So I don't buy the redistribution argument that people use, okay? I haven't seen any science supporting it either. I know it's a popular idea, but there's no science behind it, and I just don't see that happening at all. All right, let's see. What do you think of zeolite for metals and mycotoxins? I think it is one of a number of types of binders we can use to pull those out. It's something that would be reasonable to try. If I have an elevated real-time urine but no current mold exposure, is that mold colonized in the body, and what is the best thing to do to get rid of that? So that gets to be a little complicated. So if you have elevated real-time and you still have symptoms suggesting mold, meaning you have fatigue, body pains, cognitive dysfunction, and you are very sure you don't have mold exposure anywhere in your life, that gets to be the hard part, is guaranteeing that, okay? Then it is reasonable to think that maybe you have become your own source of those mycotoxins. And what I mean by that is the way that you get toxins built up in you is a couple ways. So one, there are 25% of us that have been genetically programmed in a way that we cannot remove mold toxins when we breathe them in, okay? And what happens in 75% of us is that we breathe those mold toxins in, and some of our white blood cells will see those mold toxins, they'll tag them, and then other white blood cells will come in and break those mold toxins down, okay? That's what happens in 75% of people that don't have any trouble, all right? But what happens to those 25%, the mold toxins do not get tagged, and then they go to the liver, which is supposed to try to clean them up and turn them into water-soluble toxin, but the liver doesn't handle them well. And then the next step is they go out into the intestines, and because they're not water-soluble, they mix in with our poop, and they don't mix in with our poop, rather we reabsorb them back into the bloodstream, and you just get this recirculating mess, okay? So if you have a test that says that you have elevated mold toxins and you have symptoms saying that it probably is a problem, and you live in a clean home now, that doesn't mean you did in the past, okay? Because these mold toxins could be something you breathed in 10 years, 15 years ago. They were hidden in the walls from an apartment you were living in. You didn't even know they were there, all right? But now, if you have gone through all the steps and you decided to do detoxification, you've done a good job of detoxing for 6 months or so, and you're not seeing any improvement in those mold toxins, and you are sure your work environment and your home environment does not have any mold in it because you had an inspector go in and tell you that, then it's reasonable to think that maybe you have become colonized, because the other problem that can happen with mold is there is a small subset of people with mold toxicity that when they have walked through these buildings that have mold in them, they breathe in the mold spores. And those mold spores get trapped in their sinus passages and down in their intestines. And in those places, they can become a source. They can start producing the mold toxins, okay? So I have to say, although I know there's a number of my colleagues out there that will try, when somebody has mold toxicity, they put them on mold killers, mold spore killers, and binders at the same time. I don't do that. In my experience, I've been able to take about 80% of my patients that have mold toxicity and get them well without ever putting them on an agent to kill for the colonization, okay? That's in my practice in Seattle, Washington when I was there, all right? So what I usually will do is I will treat for about 6 months, 9 months into treatment, and somebody's environment is clean, we've had them on binders, and we're still seeing nothing drop, then at that point, in addition to continuing the binders, I will put them on a mold colonization killing agents, okay? So for the intestines, I like to put people on itraconazole, and that itraconazole also can get up into the sinus passages through the blood and deal with some of the nose colonization as well too, all right? But usually the itraconazole for the sinuses is not going to be enough. And so therefore, the other thing I like to do is have people on a nasal spray, antimicrobial nasal spray. And there's a few things you can do. You can either have nystatin compounded, you can get amphotericin B compounded, or you can do silver nose sprays as well too. And so I'll do a combination of one of those along with the oral itraconazole, okay? And it can take a good 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. If you have to treat for the colonization and kill the mold spores, it's going to take some time to take care of that. Okay? All right. Thanks for your question, Mindy. Hello, Dave. Let's see here. Hello, Dr. Ross. Thanks to your advice, I've been able to get rid of most of my mycotoxins using the MycoPol binder. This binder worked. Thank you. Great. My question is the following. I just received my real-time labs yesterday, and although most of my mycotoxins are gone, except one, ochratoxin, all of a sudden shows present with a value of 2.6. Over the last year and a half of treatment and testing, I've never had ochratoxin present in my system. I've lived in my current home for over 1 year, so I know it's not my home, but maybe my diet. I've started eating healthier with raw nuts and almonds and have lost 30 pounds with the last 5 months. I drink wine and coffee as well. Any thoughts on why the ochratoxin could be elevated? Should I continue MycoPol? Thanks. All right. So here's some thoughts, okay? And these are things you probably should talk it over with your physician as well too to get their input because they know you. I can't be your doctor. I can give you ideas to think about, but because I don't get to examine you and I don't get to ask you follow-up questions in this forum, I'm not your doctor, okay? So these are ideas for you to consider, okay? All right. So number one, if you had ochratoxin in you, and you've been doing, and where ochratoxin would wind up, some of it gets in your blood, but because it's fat soluble, it's also going to settle into your fat tissues, okay? If you've been going through a lot of weight loss here, so as your fat has gone away, the ochratoxin that might have been stored in your fat has been released. And it may be why you're starting to measure it now for the first time, okay? So that's one thought, okay? Second thought is it could be a false positive. Any test that we do can be wrong, right? So even if a test result comes back saying you got something, if it's the first time it happened, it may not make sense. I repeat sometimes to see, is it really true? Okay, all right. All right, third thing is, as we use binders, the different binders that we use and the different toxins all have different affinity, meaning some of the toxins like ochratoxin may bind stronger or less strongly to those binders than other toxins. So what happens when we use binders is the ones that are bound to them most strongly get removed first. And then the ones that are not bound as strongly will start getting bound later. And also, as you start removing these toxins, your kidney's ability to pee them out gets stronger as well too. So what may have happened is maybe this stuff has just been sitting in you all along, and that your binders weren't moving them enough because they were focused on the other toxins. And the aflatoxin or the ochratoxin may have been in you all along, but as you've gotten better, your kidneys can pee them out more easily now. Okay, and you're now that you've gotten your other toxins out, maybe the mycopole will do a better job of getting that out as well too. Okay, so that's another thing that could have happened here. Okay, all right, and then finally, it's possible you've got a food source of these as well too. So it gets really complicated to sort through this. Usually what I'll do in a situation like this when I'm not sure is I go back and repeat the test to make sure was it right, okay? And if it does come back elevated, regardless of whether it's a food source or it's because you've had a lot of weight loss that redistributed the ochratoxin, what I would probably do is stay on the mycopole, okay? All right. But talk it over with your physician. All right, good luck to you, Dave. Let's see here. Hold on here a minute, everyone. Hello, Caesar. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I live in Miami, so there is not an LLMD here. I'm trying to put together 3 different integrative doctor supplements for my 14-year-old treatment. 14-year-old daughter, as each one adds an extra layer, and I would like to know if it's too much or something is missing. She had psychiatric symptoms of depression, panic, self-harm, and most of them are cleared after 3 months. Today, she has mostly ADHD and cognition is still not the same. Could you help me taking or adding Bart Doxy 2 times, Buconazole 1 time, cinnamon clove oregano 2 times, MC Bart 6 drops 2 times. Supplements are Spectrum, Cytoquel, and Neuroprotect plus curcumin, vitamin D, glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid, CoQ10. All right. So again, I know you're saying you can't find somebody, but again, I can't be your doctor. I can give you some ideas to think of, and it would be ideal if you did talk to a physician about them. Okay, all right. So the things that I find kind of duplicating here that I don't think I would do in a treatment like this. So I like that that she is on doxy and fluconazole. Those are both active, or the doxy is good against growing Bartonella. Fluconazole is good against growing and persister, and seems to do a good job with mental health symptoms as well too. I like that you're on the cinnamon clove oregano. It also goes after growing and persisters and can break apart biofilm too. I don't think the MC Bart actually is useful at all, to be honest with you. And I don't think it's going to do. She's already an enough killer, so I think I would probably pull that one out. The Cytoquel and curcumin kind of duplicate each other in terms of what the end outcome is. So I would probably go just with the curcumin, and for that I usually like curcumin phytosome, 500 milligrams 3 times a day. I don't think she necessarily needs to be on both a Cytoquel and a curcumin. They both are lowering cytokines, basically, okay? The Neuroprotect, I'm not quite sure why she's on that from what you said here. The Neuroprotect is something that has luteolin in it, which we find to be good at stabilizing what are called mast cells, all right? So mast cells are a type of cell that gets turned on when you're allergic, but also can get turned on by chronic infections and manufactures and releases a lot of histamines. And so we tend to think of it as people that have become very reactive to their environment. are people that have a lot of excessive allergies or asthma. But if she's not one of those people, I'm not sure why she's on that, okay? And then the glutathione and the alpha-lipoic acid basically are replicating each other. The glutathione is glutathione. The alpha-lipoic acid basically helps your body produce more glutathione. So I would pick one or the other instead of doing both of those, all right? So those are my thoughts. Again, it would be ideal if we could talk it over with the physician. I can't be your daughter's physician here, okay? All right. Thanks for the question. Good luck to you. Good luck to your daughter. Hello, Tim. Hi, Dr. Ross. I was just wondering how fast biofilms and fibrin nest regrow. Thank you so much. Good question. I don't know. I don't know how quickly. If you're asking how quickly after you stop using the thing that was taking care of them, do they come back? I honestly don't know. I would bet pretty quickly if I was to guess about that, but I don't know. All right. Thanks for the question. Hello, Katie. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thank you for taking my question. I had a tick bite 2 years ago, and though I started antibiotics within weeks, I've never recovered. I have tested positive for Bartonella and been treating it for almost the whole 2 years. Let's see if I can find your second part here. Let's see, I'm now having symptoms of nausea, vertigo, chills, and one leg, etc. What can I add to this BART protocol? I'm on rifampin, Bactrim, methylene blue, and clarithromycin. So I wish I could ask you a lot of questions, which I can't in this format here, to clarify how you know you have Bartonella. And what symptoms do you have suggesting Bartonella, right? But I'll make one observation. You said you've been treated for 2 years. If it's pretty much has been on this protocol for 2 years, one of the reasons that you may have a hard time improving is that your germs may have just learned resistance to this combination, okay? And so generally I like to try to switch my Bartonella treatments about every 6 months, unless I've got somebody that seems to be doing a good job, okay? So if you've been on these for over 6 months or more, if you were my patient, I might, instead of adding to this, I might consider just changing it, okay? So an alternative protocol that you might look at would be azithromycin, which is in the same family as the clarithromycin, and combine that with a diflucan, fluconazole, and you might even use that along with a tetracycline. So you could do a doxycycline, 100 milligrams twice a day with azithromycin, 500 milligrams once a day. And those are very active and good for treating growing Bartonella. And then for the persisters and growing, you would add in fluconazole. Okay, that's one option. Another option might be looking at a doxycycline, azithromycin, and to go after your persisters and Bartonella biofilm, you might use a liposomal cinnamon clove oregano, a capsule that's by Doctor Inspired Formulations, and you might do 1 pill twice a day on that. The other thing you might do is instead of the liposomal cinnamon clove oregano is cryptolepis. Cryptolepis is, we've historically have used to treat babesia, but the research came out from Hopkins about a year and a half ago suggesting that it's an active agent against growing in persister Bartonella and growing in persister Lyme. And when I use it more for the Bartonella and Lyme, I'm usually going to dose it at about a half teaspoonful 3 times a day, okay? Now, if you have been on, if you haven't been on rifampin, Bactrim, methylene blue, clarithromycin for more than 6 months and you're wondering what could you add, things you could add would be a liposomal cinnamon clove oregano, 1 pill twice a day, or you could add a cryptolepis, a half teaspoonful 3 times a day. But given all these other things you're on, you should get your doctor involved to make sure they're aware of what you're doing and whether they feel comfortable with you doing that too. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Katie. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Must one with chronic Lyme always and forever have to take a biofilm blister as long as they have symptoms? Thanks, Lisa. You know, so let me talk about biofilms real quick. So biofilms are a layer of slime that Lyme and Bartonella have the ability to cover themselves with, basically, okay? And these biofilms are really kind of complicated. They are made up of a mucopolysaccharide slime, and they're held together within a protein fibrin skeleton. And then within that mucopolysaccharide slime, there's a whole host of different germs that live that are not Lyme or Bartonella related, that are very microscopic germs that carry on different functions. And so like some of those germs act like the post office. Some of them are the sanitation department. I mean, there's a whole host of functional complex organisms, okay? Now, when we treat, it is true, there are agents that do a good job targeting biofilms, like lumber kinase can target biofilms by breaking down the fibrin that holds these mucopolysaccharide slime layers together. Biodisrupt is another agent by research nutritionals that intends to break up the biofilms. The azoles of the azole tinidazole has been shown in laboratory studies to break up biofilm. In laboratory studies, Otoba and cat's claw herbal antibiotics have been shown to break up biofilms, okay? So one thing that I have started to change to in my treatment over years, it was true that at one time I had people on specific targeted biofilm busting agents like a biodisruptor or lumber kinase, or I would specifically add in a cinnamon clove, oregano, or a Otoba and cat's claw combination just to target the biofilms, where I had them on other germ killers, okay? But the research also suggests that most antibiotics of herbal and prescription variety can break down biofilm too. And the reason that they may break down biofilm to a degree is that they're killing off those organisms living in the biofilm, and without those organisms, the biofilm falls apart, okay? So these days, when I'm treating people, I often don't do a lot, I don't put them on specific biofilm targeting agents. I know that I'm more of the opinion that the antimicrobials we use will probably break down those biofilms to a degree. Now, if I'm like 9 months, 6 months, 9 months in a treatment, we're getting nowhere, then I might add in a targeted anti-biofilm agent like a lumber kinase or like a biodisrupt at that point, okay? All right. And then, so in terms of your question, I don't think you need a biofilm buster if you, number one, got well, or number two, you're still treating your germs and you're on something antimicrobial, they'll probably take care of the biofilms. And the other situation is when you add it in your biofilm buster, if you don't think you got anything out of it, then stop it. You probably didn't get anything out of it. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Lisa. Good luck to you. Hello, RC. Hold on here just a minute. Find some water here. Hello, Dr. Ross. I'm confused. My husband and my friend both have all 5 mold groups. Neither are sensitive, but my husband is taking cholestyramine, started at 3 and is now at 4 times a day at the same time, taken with the other binders of activated charcoal, bentonite clay, chlorella, taken 2 hours away from food and supplements, just like I did years ago under your care, and it worked. With the addition of Sacro B with food, which really helps with zearalenone. My friend, who is also not sensitive with the same doctor as my husband, is taking bentonite clay, Welchol, activated charcoal, and chlorella, but only in the morning and night. When I was with you, I took cholestyramine 3 times a day, and we added bentonite clay with cholestyramine 4 times a day. up from 3. Why isn't common practice to take binders, both supplements and medicines, 3 to 4 times a day? And also, she was taken off her binders for a week before real-time lab tests, and both times her numbers increased. All right, I think it looks like there was another part here to your question, RC. Let's see. No, it's not showing up. So in the earlier days of my practice, and I can't remember when I worked with you in the past, so forgive me for that. But in the earlier days, the person that I learned to treat mold toxicity with was Dr. Richie Shoemaker. And Dr. Shoemaker is the person that came up with this idea that some people have mold colonization. And he was not a believer in chronic Lyme disease, and therefore did not fully understand how sensitive some people can be in using binders, okay? So he wanted everyone on 3 or 4 times a day. And as best I could with my patients, I tried to do that, okay? Subsequently, what I have learned is that you can also get a person well doing it only 2 times a day or 1 time a day, if that's all a person can tolerate. So in my more sensitive patients, I tend to have them only take it twice a day these days, and I have found good success doing that. And because of that, I started trying to do it in my not sensitive patients, and I also found good success only removing with a 2 time a day binder. So my nature of how I have worked has evolved over time. Okay, all right. It is a discussion, though, that I usually try to engage with my patients about, which is, it is possible if we gave you binders more frequently and you're not sensitive, you may get these toxins out more fast. You might. And so I don't know why the physician you're talking about here has decided to do twice a day. I don't know all the ins and outs about this person that you're mentioning here enough to know whether it makes sense it should only be twice a day or not. But I just want to let you know there's some of the background behind it. It's not necessarily bad that it's only twice a day. It might be enough over time to slowly pull all of those toxins out. Okay, all right. And I'm glad. I hope you're still doing well too. I think you are from what you just said here too. So thanks for that question. Hello, Tim. Hi, Dr. Ross. Sorry, I have a second question. One of the minocycline brands had pellets inside the capsule, and I have some that don't. Does that matter? Thank you so much again. So, minocycline predominantly in this country is not brand, it's a generic. And each of the generic manufacturers may package it and put the active ingredients, formulate them a little different. Well, the active chemical minocycline is in here, but how they package them and put together their pills may vary. I don't think it matters, to be honest with you, but that may be what's going on. It's just a different generic manufacturer of that product, okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Tim. Good luck to you. Hello, James. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have been on herbal antimicrobials for Lyme and Bartonella for a year and came off them and noticed gradual fatigue coming back and then some ankle pain and burning feet at night, as well as brain fog within days. Could this be Bartonella relapse? When does one really need to consider antibiotics in relapse, or can they be treated on natural therapeutics? Also, lumbar kinase something to consider in these relapse situations for Bartonella and Lyme. Are there any cautions for using this? Thank you. All right. So James, let me make just a comment, an observation, which may answer part of your question here, okay? So both Bartonella and Lyme have a different life cycle of how quickly they grow back, all right? So Bartonella replicates every 24 hours. And so if you're in a treatment that has been killing your germs and got your germ load down, but it's not all gone, and then you stop it, it's going to replicate every 24 hours and your symptoms will usually come back usually within a week to a few weeks after starting Bartonella if it's too soon, okay? All right. For Lyme, if you're in a treatment, you've been doing better and you stop it, Lyme replicates. The estimates I've seen say every 4 to 8 weeks. And because it replicates so slowly, it's going to come back slowly. And so it's very common when you get into a Lyme relapse that you're not, or Lyme returning because you stop treatment too soon. It's going to be something that occurs about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks down the road, you start getting symptomatic, okay? All right. So the timing of how quickly this happened would suggest to me a Bartonella problem. And I think that's what your question was here, okay? The timing of that would suggest it, all right? Now, when a person relapses or their symptoms return, it may not be a full relapse, it just may mean the germ was still there and you never got over it, okay? Or if you're just beginning the treatment, I think it's okay to work with either herbal antibiotics or prescriptions, either as your front line or as something you use in a relapse situation. Now, you have to understand differences of potential chance of outcome, okay? So in my experience, prescription antibiotic regimens for the Lyme germ are effective. Any combination we put you on has a chance of helping you about 85 to 90% of the time. That's prescriptions, okay? For the herbal antibiotics, I also see something similar, that any one combination of herbal antibiotics have an 85 to 90% chance they will help you. For Bartonella, I see something different. And for Bartonella, the prescription side, I see that any combination of prescription antibiotics have about a 75 to 80, I'd say about 75 to 85% chance they're going to help you. I'm sorry, that's wrong. An 80 to 85% chance they're going to help you, okay? Versus herbal antibiotics, I see as having a 75 to 80% chance. Now, that doesn't mean that the first set of herbal antibiotics you go on doesn't work. That doesn't mean you can't switch to another one. And they too also have a 75 to 80% chance they'll help you, okay? So as you're redesigning a treatment, now that you've got some return of your symptoms, keep that in mind, all right? So the herbs can do a good job of helping you, okay? They have a slight less chance on Bartonella side than they would on the Lyme side, for instance, okay? The other thing, though, that sometimes I will do with my patients, if we stop the antibiotics and they get a quick return of symptoms, I am wondering about Bartonella usually. And there's an argument to me going back to what worked, at least to get things back under control. And then once you're feeling better, then go ahead and change to something different too, okay? All right. Good luck to you, James. Hello, Eileen. Thanks so much for all you do to help us Lymies. You're welcome. Does Lyme trigger pancreas issues or push someone over the line to diabetes? My husband tested positive for 8 types of Lyme. He has been battling it for several years in spite of a very good diet, lots of exercise. His sugar levels have been increasing slightly, but staying well below diabetic levels. Now, all of a sudden, his sugar levels have shot up to over 200, and he has some pancreatic inflammation. Could the Lyme affect this? You know, I haven't seen, I have not seen Lyme trigger diabetes. I just haven't seen it happen. I don't, and therefore I haven't looked in to see if there could be a mechanism that would explain it. So I don't know, but I can reflect to you, I haven't seen it. I have seen acute inflammation from Herxheimer reactions and from Lyme trigger increased cholesterol levels. There is a relationship that would lead to that happening, but I haven't seen it on the diabetes side before that I'm aware of, okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Eileen. Good luck to your husband. Whatever. If you ever see me going like that, I have my readers are down here in the bottom and I have no magnification up here. So I have to keep going like that so I can read things. I was trying to see what time it was here. Anyhow, hi, Susan. Let's see. Let's take your question here. I'm in my 3rd year treating Babesia, Bartonella, Lyme, Long COVID, several mycotoxins, and yeast, fungus, and candida. It is taking a very long time to rid my body of these pathogens. I have 2 questions. Can you explain what might contribute to it taking years to get rid of the pathogens? And can you talk about when or if I can tell if I'm finally able to stop treating for the Babesia? I have stopped my atovaquone after 2 years and the Babesia symptoms return, so I'm back on it. You are truly wonderful to be doing what you are doing for the millions of people suffering these illnesses. To me, you're a hero. Thank you. Susan, I appreciate that. Thank you. So let me share with you. We don't know why some people get over this illness easily. So for instance, 85% of people with tick-borne illnesses, if they get treated right away, never have problems again. All right, 85%. And that's, with a month or 2 months of treatment, right? But there is a group of 15% that do have a hard time getting over this. And there's a whole plethora of theories as to why that is. But one thing I would say to you is that one of the things to consider is, or one of the things that I have observed is that in those people, it's just a matter of plodding on and keep working on it, okay? That's one thing I would say, okay? The other thing I want you to know is that my Lyme data, well, actually, that's not going to be useful here. But anyhow, I just want you to know that, okay? Then the other thing I have to wonder when, and I don't, if you were coming to me as a patient and you just told me this quickly, I would say, well, whoa, okay, I need to ask you a lot of questions because I would want to know what have you been on and when and for how long and what were the initial things changed to. And besides atovaquone, for instance, what other anti-Babesia agents have you tried? Have you tried primaquine? Have you tried tafenoquine? Have you tried cryptolepis? Or essentially for 2 to 3 years, have you just been on the same regimen and no one thought to make a decent change in it, okay? So the other thing that I would say is if you are working with an LMD and they haven't made significant periodic changes to your regimen, then you need to ask them, why aren't you changing things? Why aren't you, why would you put me back on a Babesia agent that already proved it failed? Why would you not change the regimen away from an atovaquone-based treatment to something different, for instance, okay? So I think you've got to go back and talk to your doctor and just say, and maybe you have, but I can't tell from what you've written here, basically, okay? So 2 things. One is it does just take time in some people. We don't have a good explanation why. Secondly, when treatment is not working, you've got to go back and review what have you been on when, and were there adequate changes made along the way? And if one type of regimen is not working, was it changed to another type of regimen, etc.? And I don't get the benefit of being able to do that in this format with you, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Susan. Hello, Belgrazada. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. If I have Lyme, Babesia, enteritis, yeast on fungus, what to treat first? What to use? In the morning, feel very bad. In the evening is a little bit better. Right. So first of all, what I usually like to do in my treatments, if somebody has a lot of either intestinal or oral yeast, I usually will take about a month and start to try to clean that out with an anti-yeast regimen, like a nystatin or a diflucan, for instance. And I do this for about a month, okay? Then I might start gradually entering in the Lyme and a Babesia treatment. You can do that at the same time, okay? But I would try to clear the yeast first, spend about a month doing that. After that is done, then I might add agents in that will treat the Lyme and the Babesia, all right? anyhow, you should talk that over with your doctor though to see, based on what they know of you, is that the appropriate approach for you too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. All right, everyone, that's it. Got a couple Basenji dogs that want to go out and walk in our 100-degree temperatures here. Yes, believe it or not, they still do. Anyhow, I've got to go take care of my dogs, and I've got to move on with other parts of my evening here. It's been good to be here with you again. Again, I apologize for last week's microphone malfunction. And then yesterday, I also apologize that MailChimp had said it delivered the emails, but when I go back and look at my accounts to see if I ever got those emails, I did not. And when I checked earlier today, just right before the webinar, to see how many people had clicked on those MailChimp emails, nobody had, which means that even though MailChimp said they sent it, they didn't get to you. So I apologize for that. It's the first time I've seen that happen too. So anyhow, some of you got a very late email from me saying that we were having the webinar. So I'm glad to see a lot of you still showed up. And I hope that you will show up again next week as well too. So tomorrow morning, keep a lookout at your email somewhere between 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, Austin, Texas time. I will send an email to you notifying you that the edited version of the video is ready for you to see again. It will also include a synopsis of what we talked about here tonight. And there will be a link that you can use to sign up for next week's webinar. And again, if for some reason you don't get an email from me, you want to sign up for next week's webinar, go to the webinars page at treatlyme.net. And on there, there's a big button you can push that will take you to the sign up page as well too. Okay? All right. Good night, everyone. Good to be here with you again.